it's that time again where I wrap up the books that I read for the past 3 months. Also, if I'm looking down, I am in the middle of a knitting project that I sort of need to get done before October. So we'll see how that goes. Within the months of July, August and September, I read 11 books, and actually 8 of those 11 books I have a physical copy of. So I don't know if that means that I've been really good about reading my TBR, like my physical TBR, or if it means that I've enjoyed a lot more of the books that I've been reading this third quarter. Because if you haven't picked up on my reading habits, I don't keep books that I don't like, which is why I rarely ever buy my books brand new, because I just find that it's a waste if I don't know if I'm gonna, like, you know, love it. So you know, I read a lot of backlist titles because I find them secondhand pretty much. Anyway, usually with it, like, you know, the past 2 quarters that I've done this, I've looked at my story graph and sort of the statistics, and like if it was an adult book, a teen book, a romance, you know, genres and all that stuff. I'm not going to do that this time, just because I realized that I don't really care. So, you know, we're not going to focus too much on the statistics. I think the only sort of thing that I want to keep track of is whether or not I keep the books that I read, meaning whether or not I enjoyed them enough to keep the books that I read. The first book that I picked up was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This is a romance rom-com kind of book. This story follows Jess and River. Those are the 2 hero and heroine of this romance book. And Jess is, let me see if I can remember the plot. So Jess is a statistics person. She's a freelance statistician. Is that week? I don't know if that's maybe I just made that word up. So she and her best friend Fizz, who is a romance author, they hang out at this coffee shop all the time because they're both sort of freelancers, and so they can, like, you know, work at coffee shops. One day Jess runs into River at this coffee shop. Turns out River is a part of this, I don't think he's a CEO, but he's a part of this matchmaking service that he's sort of trialing, and the way this matchmaking thing works is through your DNA. And Fizz, being, you know, the romance author that she is, she's like, hey, let's just like try it out, like it could be really fun. So then Jess is like, okay, sure, I'll try it out. And then the story sort of goes on from there. As you can see, I don't have a physical copy. I didn't really like this. I liked it to begin with, but yeah, I didn't really like it. It just felt really awkward. like both characters were just really awkward to me. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't really like that one. Alright, I'm just going to finish up this row and then we will move on to the next one. So because I wasn't satisfied with that romance, I decided to pick up a more fantasy type of romance, and I picked up Half a Soul by, I don't have my glasses, so Olivia Atwater, I think. I can't read that. This is a, like I said, romance fantasy. We follow, I forgot her name, but we follow Dora, that's her name. She was cursed when she was younger by this fairy who took half of her soul, and that has made her a little bit strange. In the beginning of the book, we find out she's cursed, and then flash forward to when she's a little bit older. I don't remember how old she is, but she's a little bit older than her cousin, and her cousin is now of age to find a suitor, basically. So her cousin has to go into London to sort of you know, mingle with the eligible bachelors or whatever, and you know, make an impression of herself, kind of thing, to be married off. And her cousin is basically like best friends with our main character Dora, and so she's like, I'm not gonna go if Dora doesn't go. So her aunt is like, okay fine, Dora can go, but she's gonna kind of embarrass our family basically because she's so strange. Anyway, Dora goes with her cousin, and then things happen from there. I enjoyed this. I didn't love it or anything like that. It is one of those books that's very fast paced because it only has one plot, so there is no like subplots that you need to worry about or anything like that, which I always find those kind of books to be like quick reads, because there's not a lot of like character building, there's not a lot of there is, you know, obviously the romance aspect, which is kind of the main plot. There is also the breaking the curse aspect, which is also sort of a plot. I don't know, but yeah, it was okay. If you're like looking for something lighthearted and fun, I do recommend it. Will I read the rest of the companion books? I don't think so. I could be wrong, you know, I could change my mind. I change my mind all the time, but for now I don't think I want to continue on with the companion books. Next, I completely switched up these genres and I read a horror book. I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This, like I said, it's this horror book. It's a very slow burn, atmospheric kind of horror. I will say that first off. So what I mean by that is, if you are into more like slashery kind of horror, like Clown in a Cornfield, Scream, Grady Hendrix, those kind of books, I don't know, like it's not the same as that. It's a different horror. It's a more, I don't want to say literary, because I just find the word literary to be a little bit pretentious and I don't like it. But this has really, it's very atmospheric, like I said, which means that it is really beautifully written, because in order to build up atmosphere, it's in the writing, right? So yeah, so that is what I'll say about this particular horror. I find that this is like a whole different discussion, but I find that the horror genre is so broad nowadays that I feel like people need to specify a little bit more what kind of horror things are. So anyway, we follow Noemi. She is this, oh, this is also set in like the 50s in Mexico. So we follow Noemi, who is this socialite girl. She is like in her early 20s. In the beginning of the book, Noemi gets a letter from her cousin, who was just recently married to a guy that the family doesn't really know too much about. Like, they got married very quick, they got engaged very quick, and then they got married very quick, and then she like moved to the middle of nowhere in Mexico, I guess. Yeah, because she's not, because I think Noemi's in Mexico City, I think, but her cousin isn't. She's like out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, so she gets a letter from her cousin, and it's a very disturbing letter. She's saying things like, you need to come here, I miss you, I think they're poisoning me, something's wrong with this house, all this kind of stuff. And Noemi is like, this is a bit strange, I'm gonna talk to my dad about this. The dad is sees this letter, and at first he's like, I think she's just being hysterical. I don't know what's going on. She can't possibly divorce because this is the 50s, and also, you know, that won't look good on us either. So there is that like underlying, you know, social pressure as well. And then the dad is like, okay, you go visit your cousin, just say that it's, you know, just a visit because you miss her. Like, don't make it obvious that you're trying to suss out the family, but also like try and suss out the family and see what's going on. Noemi goes to visit her cousin, and right from the get-go she notices just some strange stuff about the family and the house and the property and everything like that. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I knew about it, so I don't think I want to tell you anymore. It's weird. It's also one of those books where for the longest time reading it, you don't know if the thing is like a supernatural thing or if it's just creepy people being creepy, you know? So I really like those kind of books. I think they're really fun to read. So yeah, if you're into the more atmospheric, slow build, suspenseful kind of horror, I highly recommend this. I will say there is some gruesome things in it as well. That's all I'm gonna say. Don't want to say anymore. But yeah, I enjoyed this. Also, I forgot to mention, I basically read this horror book on our honeymoon. Which is crazy. I should have read like a romance or something. Anyway, the next book that I finished, I didn't start this during our honeymoon, but I did finish it around that time, and that is 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. And it's a collection of like essays and articles and stuff by Brianna Weist. I think I've mentioned this in my like book haul video, but my sister got this for my birthday, and yeah, it's just a collection of sort of different essays and like articles. I would call them like little articles more than essays. They're not super long, and a lot of them are just like dot points, but yeah, I don't know what to say about it. I really like it. I love these kind of like, I guess you could call them self-help, but I feel like people look down on self-help, but I like this. I just think it brings up a lot of good points about just, you know, how to control the way you think and your mood and your like everyday life, basically. So yeah, I enjoyed that one. The next book I actually found on our last day of our honeymoon. So we actually went to this island just off of Queensland, just the north of Queensland. Would you consider it north? Yeah, I guess it's kind of north-ish. So it's only like a 20-minute sort of ferry ride from the mainland, basically, and then the last day before we had to fly back home, we stayed in the actual town, like at the in Queensland, and so we were able to go to a bookstore. We were just like looking around and everything like that, and I actually found a deal with The Elf King by Elise Cover. I've been wanting to read this book for so long because I think I heard about it from Carrie Can Read, because that's where I get all of my recommendations, basically. But this is a fantasy romance, and it's actually a companion series, which I am going through the books, so I will make a whole separate video talking about all of the books, so I'll be brief in this one. So our main character, I forgot her name, she is a healer for the town, and this town has had a deal with the elf people, the elf king, that they will sacrifice a human to be the elf king's bride every like 100 years or 300 years or something like that. But like, you know, throughout this time, whenever they've taken like a human girl, the elf king himself hasn't actually gone into the human world to get the bride. They just like send their people, their soldiers or whatever. And that's kind of the deal with the human and the elves. Like the elves will protect the humans from all these other like magical creatures if they get a human bride out of it every 100 years or so, which is a great deal. Anyway, our main character is a healer, and she has always felt indebted to this town because this town basically scrounged up all of their money to be able to get her to the academy and let her study healing so that she can sort of come back and like be the healer of the town. In the beginning of the book, apparently the elf king hasn't found a bride in a while, and so he's really pissed. So he himself goes to the human world, their village, and is like, you promised a human bride, you need to give one to me. So then he gets really mad at the town square, and then someone faints, and then our main character, she is like trying to help because she's a healer, she's very, you know, caring and everything, and then the elf king sees her and he's like, all right, you'll do, I'm just gonna take you because I'm so sick of not having a human bride, basically. And then he takes her, and then she goes into the magical world, and then that's where things happen. This is a enemies to lovers kind of romance. I actually didn't mind this one. You know, it is tropey. Whenever you go into these kind of books, you have to know that these are all tropes that we all love, you know, like you go into it because you know you love enemies to lovers kind of a trope. So yeah, I didn't mind this at all. I thought it was really entertaining. Next up, I read The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I've read 2 other Lucy Foley books. I got the second hand and it's like contacted, so I'm not sure if it used to be like a library copy or not, but I love library copies sometimes because they get like the big version with like big font and everything. Anyway, like I said, I read 2 other Lucy Foley books. I read The Guest List, which I really liked, and then I read The Hunting Party, which I didn't like as much. This one I really enjoyed. This one reminds me of Riley Sager's Lock Every Door. I always mention this when I mention that book. I liked the book, I just didn't like the ending. I didn't like the reveal, basically. So this one has a much better reveal at the end. It's a very similar story, and I'm not, you know, faulting either of them for like copying each other or anything like that. It's just I think I just find similarities because I read a lot of romance and I read a lot of thrillers, and so, you know, that's just bound to happen. Anyway, this one follows this girl, again I forgot her name, and she is sort of running away from something in London, I want to say, in Brighton, somewhere in the UK, and so she tries to contact her brother who is in Paris, and is like, hey, can I, you know, crash your place for a little bit because, you know, I need to get out of this situation that I'm in, and I need somewhere to sort of hide out before I figure out my next move, basically. So in the beginning of the book, we see the brother listen to her voicemail. Oh, I think it's a voice message. It's not a voicemail, it's a voice message. And then he is sort of recording a voice message back, but as he's doing it, you can tell that someone has entered his apartment and he's a little bit confused. And then cut to the sister, our main character, arriving at his apartment in Paris. She's like able to sort of break into his place, basically, because he hasn't been answering his phone. And then it's just about her trying to figure out what has happened to her brother. Like I said, it's got a very similar plot to Lock Every Door. So if you enjoyed Lock Every Door, I think you would enjoy this one as well. It's really, really good. I like it. There are not too many characters. I thought I was gonna be really confused because of the like too many different characters like I did with Lock Every Door, but I think Lucy Foley always does a really great job in making her characters distinct enough that you won't really get confused. Next, I read A Dance with the Fey Prince by Elise Kober. This is technically, you could say, is the second book to the Married to Magic series that she's got, but it is like a companion series, so you don't really need to read, you know, the books in order or anything like that. None of the characters overlap or anything like that, so you don't need to worry about, like, you know, too many spoilers from the other books. But this one, we follow our main character again. Don't know what her name is, I don't remember. So at the beginning of the book, her dad disappears and they automatically think like, oh, I think he's probably just like died. So then the stepmom is like, well, we need money, basically, because if he's not around, we don't have an income, because I don't think she works. And then so then she makes a deal with this guy that comes into her house, that you can take one of my daughters, basically, to this prince guy, and then, you know, in exchange for money, basically sold her off. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I didn't like this one as much. It was really, I didn't like the main character, and I didn't like the male main character either, like the hero. I just thought that their relationship was really weird. I didn't like it. And then it is a little bit more plot heavy than the first one. The first one, I felt like, even though there was plot, it was a lot more to do with the romance, whereas this one, I felt like it felt a little bit more plot heavy and more adventurous, I guess. But yeah, that's all I can remember, because I didn't really enjoy it that much. Next up, I read The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Is that how you pronounce it? This is obviously a classic. It's a short story, would you say, or a novella? It's not very long. It's like 100 and something pages or something. It's about this woman who is in this house with her husband, but her husband is always out, and her husband keeps saying that she's sick and she needs to get better, and she's sort of stuck in this room with this really ugly wallpaper that she gets sort of fascinated by. Like, she's very like, she gets a little bit obsessed with this wallpaper, because she's like, there's something wrong with the wallpaper. and her husband keeps saying like, oh no, you're just sick, like you just stay inside, stay in this room. And yeah, I thought it was good. It's good, you know, like it was what I expected basically. Next up, I read Make Good Art, which is a speech that Neil Gaiman did for, it was like a commencement speech for this university. My husband actually found this for me secondhand, and he knew that I really like that speech, so he got it for me. So I reread it. I really like it. It's just a very motivational, encouraging speech about being an artist basically. So yeah, I really like this speech. If you haven't heard it and you need some like motivation or something like that, it's on YouTube and it's very good. Next up, I read the third book in the Married to Magic companion series by Elise Kober, and I read A Duel with the Vampire Lord. This is the thickest one out of the three. I'm not sure about the fourth and the fifth one, but this one's the thickest one so far, and I think this is the one I enjoyed the most. I don't know what it is, but the vibe of this book reminds me a lot of Underworld. It has that like gothic feel to the, like gothic dangerous feel to the vibe. Basically we follow Florian, who is our main character. She is a smith, like she like makes weapons out of silver. Our main character lives in a village that is very, very close to the edge of where the vampires live, and so she makes like her like village is sort of the protective village from the vampires, because all the other humans in the other villages don't know about this one. She just like, her village just so happens to be the protector because they are on the edge, and every full moon these vampires come out from the what they call a fade, which is like the in-between world from the magic to the human world, and they have to sort of, you know, fight these vampires. So she is someone who makes weapons, so she makes like sickles and swords and all, you know, armor and all that stuff for the hunters. Her twin brother is a hunter. Her dad was a hunter, but he died. Her mum and every female in her family has always been the forge maiden. And in this village, the forge maiden gets married off to someone who the head hunter guy like chooses, basically, just so they can like continue on the line of like forge maiden, someone who makes the weapons, and also a hunter. So in the beginning of the book, it is the red moon is coming up, and the red moon is different to the full moon because they suspect that the vampire lord himself will be able to cross the fade into the human realm and like attack everyone, basically. So her brother is like really scared for her, like for his life, but also for her and her mum's life. And so he's like, if anything happens, take this elixir and you know, protect yourself and protect mum, basically. So the red moon night comes, and then she gets really scared, and she takes the elixir and then she runs out of the house. She's like, Mum, protect yourself. And she runs out of the house trying to save her brother, because she's like, I think he's in trouble. I can feel him. He's my twin. I think he's in trouble. she comes, she finds him, and then he's like about to be kind of beaten by the vampire lord, because the vampire lord is actually there. And then the vampire lord looks at her and he's like, what have they done to you? And then takes her to his world, and that's kind of where the story begins. I really like this. I really like the romance. I also really like the plot. I thought the plot was really interesting. Usually I'm like I don't really care about plot, and I care more about characters and romance, but this plot was interesting to me. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of like lies from both sides, and like I said, it's got that like underworld feel. So if you like the underworld movies, you might like this one, because it's really cool. Also, I kept saying this to Andrew, but I think my the vampire lord is probably my favorite so far out of all the heroes in Elise Cover's books, because although it's like they're all enemies to lovers, right? But this one in particular I think I really like, because I like when the hero is more gentle, and I don't like, so one of the things I didn't like in the first one, it was okay, but I didn't really like it, and they didn't do it with this one. It's that trope of like the hero seems really mean and like evil and bad to the heroine, but actually in the background he's been doing a lot of good things for her, and that was kind of what was happening in the first book. In this one, he has always been gentle and like kind to our main character, and I really like that. Like, he hasn't been hiding his kindness basically, which I think is really good. So yeah, I really like this one. And then lastly, I finished another, what I would call a classic, a more modern classic, I guess, and that book is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. So yeah, I've never actually read this before. I haven't watched the movie. The only two of those movies that I've watched is Spirited Away and Kiki's Delivery Service, and I really like Kiki's Delivery Service, which apparently is a book, and I'm excited to read that one. But anyway, Howl's Moving Castle is about our main character, Sophie. She, how do I even explain the plot to this? It's so weird. She is a firstborn child, and so she has it in her head that if you're a firstborn child, you won't really amount to anything, because you were kind of like, you will always sort of try things first, and so you won't, you know, succeed, because you'll be the one to fail first. So she's got that kind of mindset in the beginning. And then in this town there is this floating castle that comes around, and there's all these rumors about Wizard Howl and how he like eats, you know, young women, and he's really evil, and all of this kind of like bad stuff has been said about him. But then all these things happen, and then she ends up getting a visit from the Witch of the Waste, and the Witch of the Waste is like, you are stealing. Oh, she works in a hat shop. She works in a hat shop, and the Witch of the Waste is like, I can't believe you're stealing all my customers. I don't like competition. I'm gonna put a curse on you. And so the Witch of the Waste curses her to be this old woman, this like 90-year-old woman. And so she's like this old woman now, and she's like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna go seek my fortune, and I'm gonna seek some help. And then she comes across Howl's Moving Castle, and then she kind of stays there, and that's where the story sort of starts. That's all I'm gonna say. I think if you watch the movie, you'll pretty much know. I haven't watched the movie, but I have heard from my friend that the movie is very different to the book. So I'm excited to see like the differences. But yeah, I enjoyed this. This is like very whimsical. Also, what I was saying to her was that this book, I'm 100%, maybe not 100, but like I am like 97% certain that Stephanie Garber's Once Upon a Broken Heart series was sort of influenced by this, or inspired by Howl's Moving Castle, because Jax and Howl have a similar, like, it's a similar outline basically. Jax is obviously a lot more broody, whereas Howl is a little bit more, like, this book is more whimsical and like fun and silly and like chaotic, whereas like Once Upon a Broken Heart is a little bit more, it is that, like, it is still whimsical and it's still, you know, fun and adventurous, but it has like a serious note to it. And I think like Howl is a little bit more silly, not silly, but just like light-hearted, whereas Jax is a little bit more broody and like serious. And Sophie and Evangeline are like very, very similar. I think Evangeline is like a little bit more of a hopeless romantic than Sophie is. Sophie's a little bit more pessimistic and like, not pessimistic, but just like she's sort of down on herself. She like doesn't believe in herself. And Evangeline has that too, but at the same time she is a lot more hopeful. So yeah, like the plot is different. It has some like essence of Howl's Moving Castle's plot, but it's not, you know, it's not the same at all. But yeah, I just thought that that was really interesting, that I could see the similarities and just the feel of it, the vibe of it basically is very Once Upon a Broken Heart. So yeah, that is everything that I've read within the past 3 months. Please let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of the books that I've read, if you agree with some of my thoughts, if you have a different thought to me with some of them that you've read. Let me know that as well. And as always, if you have any book recommendations for me, please leave them down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video if you liked it. And yeah, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time.